do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indie Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indie Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indie Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket, which you can go subscribe to over on YouTube. Hop in the chat to be part of the conversation. You can also watch the show over on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indie Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 14:30 a.m. if you're in the Indianapolis area. Big show today. Coming up here in about 20 minutes, we've got Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He covers college football. He's going to help you get ready for week one. And, of course, Zack Gray at 11:40 got a nice little surprise later today after the show as well when it comes to ZG. So very excited to have both of them on today to help get you ready for week one of the college football season, which starts tomorrow, Labor Day weekend. This weekend's just going to be so freaking awesome. Oh, it's going to be great. I'm leaving today after the show to head down to Chattanooga. I'm going to go see my parents. My sister's birthday's on Sunday, and you know, my other brother, he's got, or I guess his sister, or my sister-in-law, his wife, has a baby shower. So a lot of cool things. While they're all doing those things, I'm going to be watching TV. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So a lot of college football. Indiana and Purdue both get their seasons started tomorrow. And it's one of the very rare times during the season that I'm going to say the same thing about Indiana and Purdue. Purdue, they're going to play Ball State at noon, and Indiana is set to play Old Dominion from the great state of Virginia. I don't know if it's a great state or not. Never been there. They're going to play them at 2:30 tomorrow. That game is going to be on FS1, Purdue on the Big Ten Network, I believe. And they both need to look dominant. That is the most important thing for both of them tomorrow. They're both big-time favorites. Purdue is favored by 17.5 points, and Indiana is favored by 23.5 points. Both teams are at home. It's going to be good. Both of them need to and should cover the spread. That is what should happen. IU needs to cover the spread to keep people believing. That's the very simple reality of it. And I say that because of the history of the program. We've seen one-off years of Indiana football being really good. Let's go back to Tom Allen when he had the Hoosiers ranked as high as 6th in the country, and they beat Penn State, and Michael Penix was the man here in the Hoosier State. And we've seen Indiana programs have one great year, like what Indiana had last year. Tom Allen during the COVID year. And then the following year, Tom Allen couldn't keep it going, and then the fan base kind of died, and then he got fired. Coach Cignetti had a great year one. Everybody loves that dude unless you're an SEC fan, right? They like the cockiness and the arrogance and the expectation to win. Okay, Coach Cignetti is still wildly popular. But if they need a last-minute field goal to squeak out a win against Old Dominion, that'll stall some of, not all of, but some of the momentum. There will be a part of the Indiana football fan base where it's like, all right, here we go again. One good year, but for some reason just can't seem to have sustained success here at Indiana, right? And they'll kind of check out until Indiana plays Illinois and potentially wins that game. So Indiana needs to come out and be awesome just to kind of maintain the momentum, to maintain this expectation that Indiana football is supposed to be really good once again this year. Potentially a playoff team again. Purdue needs to be dominant for a completely and totally different reason. Purdue is trying to create momentum. Like, that is what Barry Odom is trying to do right now. You're playing Ball State. you have to house them. You have to. Last year, Purdue opened the season with Indiana State, and they beat them 49-0. And even though everyone knew that Purdue was going to be bad last year, there was still like a little bit of optimism. Like, look, like we just beat Indiana State how we should. 49-0. Maybe this team will make a bowl game. And then that didn't happen. They didn't win a game the rest of the year. And so, like, you have to give people a reason to believe in this new regime and this new team. Like, it's not only Barry Odom's debut. Purdue, of all of the Power 4 schools in the country, Purdue returns the lowest amount of starters from last year to this year. One, it's a running back. I don't even know his name. So you're not only debuting Barry Odom, but you're debuting a new quarterback and a new defensive system and a new type of offense and a new quarterback and new receivers and a new offensive line. And we can just keep on going. And like, this is their audition. This is their tryout. This is their opportunity to communicate to Purdue, say, hey, we've been not very good the last couple of years. Incompetent, to say the least. We brought in this guy, Barry Odom. He's been a head coach before, built a couple decent teams at Missouri, had UNLV fighting for a playoff spot last year. They go out there and they beat Ball State by 50. Obviously, the masses aren't going to go running back to Purdue on Saturdays. Like, that's not going to happen. But if you beat Ball State by 50, and then you go play Southern Illinois, and you beat them by 50, and then you play Notre Dame week 3, and let's say you lose, but you play them tough. You lose like 24-14, and, Notre Dame scores a late touchdown to kind of pull away a little bit. Then, if you do that, then, like, you'll have some favor from the Purdue fan base of like, hey, we aren't great this year, but we're going to be competitive. I'll drive up to West Lafayette to tailgate and hang out with my friends and watch a competent football team play. That's probably going to lose. They could do that, but it starts with week 1. They have to house Ball State. Because look, man, like if they beat Ball State by 3, no one's going to believe. No one is going to believe in Purdue going forward if they need like some last minute heroics in order, if they need last minute heroics to beat Ball State. People are going to be done very quickly. And look, the expectations are on the floor. MB over in our YouTube chat. Once again, Indie Sports Ticket. Head over there and subscribe. He chimes in saying that 3 wins is a good season for Purdue. 5 wins would be a great season. And I don't think you're far off. I think a great season is a bowl game. The issue with Purdue, and I've talked about this before, they are very similar to Indiana last year. Indiana's over-under win total last year was 5.5 games. It was 5.5 or 6.5. It was low. That's the point that I'm trying to get at here. But the issue was that no one really knew what Indiana had last year. It was a lot of transfers, a lot of new players. It's the exact same thing with Purdue this year. The expectations could not be lower. They could not be lower for the Purdue Boilermakers this season. The thing, though, the thing to me that matters is no one knows because we don't know who they have on their team. Like, you can go look at it, right? But, football, it's the ultimate team game, all the stuff that football people want you to know about football, you can apply to this Purdue team. Like, we don't know. And so, look, like, they're probably going to beat Ball State. As a big Barry Odom fan myself, as a guy who watched him coach at Missouri, as the former defensive coordinator of my Arkansas Razorbacks, I like Barry Odom. I think that he's a good coach. All right, we'll see if he can get it turned around at Purdue. I think that's a tall order. But I do think that they're going to beat Ball State, and I do think that they'll beat Southern Illinois. And then they get USC at home. Like, that is probably not going to win that game. Right. But if I just said that there's no way, I think that it would be incorrect of me to say that, given the fact that we don't know what they have. Like, if Purdue started 3-0, wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't. Like, I think that highly of Barry Odom. They're not going to beat Notre Dame. They're not going to beat Illinois. Those two things are not going to happen. But they could beat Minnesota. let's just go winnable games for Purdue. Ball State, Southern Illinois, USC at home is winnable. At Minnesota is winnable, even though it seems like people really like them this year. Northwestern is winnable. Rutgers is winnable. That's 6. And then the rest of the games are not winnable. You're not winning at Michigan. You're not beating Ohio State at home. You're probably not going to beat Washington on the road, and you're probably not going to beat Indiana. So, like, there's 6 winnable games for Purdue this year. They're probably not going to win all 6, but if they can win 4 or 5 games, I do think that's a major improvement. And if they had Indiana's schedule from last year, then this could potentially, we don't know, that's kind of the point of this, then they, potentially could have won like 8 or 9 games, because I think Indiana played like 7 of the bottom 8 teams, or like 8 of the 9 bottom teams in the Big Ten last year. And the issue is Purdue doesn't have that schedule. They don't benefit from playing the gutter of the Big Ten like Indiana did last year. Speaking of Indiana, we know what they have. Unlike Purdue, we have no idea. One of the things that Indiana has, and the reason why people are so hopeful for them, is they have Fernando Mendoza. And people are excited about him. Everyone says that he's great. CBS Sports, they have, this mock draft out where they have Fernando Mendoza going number 1 overall. And look, I don't know the guy who wrote it, but it doesn't mean anything. You say, well, Jonathan, of course it doesn't mean anything. Like, these guys haven't played any games yet or anything like that. No. That's not why I'm saying that. I remember, I guess it would have been 3 years ago now. ESPN put out an NBA mock draft before the start of the college basketball season. And they put Bronny James down as a projected lottery pick. And the writer of that, there's no way that they believed it. They just knew that if they put Bronny James in the article, that it'd go mega viral. Indiana has a very similar effect on the college football world, because Indiana fans are awesome and they ride for their team. And, every Indiana fan saw that and they posted it on X, and there was some smart remark, and then some SEC fans saw it and then they read it and they're like, wait, you got this dude from Cal who's now at Indiana's number 1 overall pick? Like, he can't be that good if he went to Indiana. And then some Indiana fan responds, and then the next thing you know, this article is absolutely blown up. So I don't think that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft. I don't think that he's the best quarterback in the country, as this article suggests. It's also really weird because if you look at the article, they have Fernando Mendoza going number 1 overall, but they have him as the 3rd best quarterback. It's a really weird thing. Like, it kind of feels like this is a little clickbaity. Because when I look around college football, I'm not convinced that Mendoza is better than Drew Aller. I'm definitely not convinced that he's better than Cade Klubnik. I'm definitely not convinced that he's better than Garrett Nussmeier. There's a world where he's not as good as Arch Manning. And like, this is a loaded quarterback class. I highly doubt that Indiana's got the guy who's going to go number 1 overall. But with that being said, there's a lot of excitement around Fernando Mendoza because he went 6-7 the last 2 years on a bad Cal team. This year, he's going to have real talent around him because he didn't have that at Cal. Elijah Surratt is projected to be one of the 10 best wide receivers in the world of college football. Indiana returns 8 of their 22 starters from last year. 3 of those starters are offensive linemen, both guards and their left tackle. So this is likely going to be the best offensive line that Fernando Mendoza has played behind. Fernando Mendoza should be able to be as good as Curtis Rourke was last year. And if that's the case, then Indiana should win a lot of games, right? They should probably go 9-3, lose to Illinois, Michigan, and who's their third tough game? They should lose to Illinois, Penn State, and Oregon. Because last year, the reality, this is what happened with Indiana football, was they beat everyone that wasn't good, and they couldn't beat teams that were good. So if Mendoza can be as good as Curtis Rourke, then I kind of expect the same thing Go 9-3, lose to the 3 good teams on your schedule. But if Fernando Mendoza can live up to being not even the number 1 overall pick, if he can just be a first-round pick, then maybe they beat Illinois at home. Maybe they go on the road to Oregon or Penn State and play them really tough, and maybe they pull off an upset. Because the gap between a first-round pick, Cam Ward, and a 6th-round pick, Riley Leonard, it's very large. It is, okay? So Fernando Mendoza should be better, and we'll see if that translates to more Indiana wins. Right? I can't wait for football tomorrow. It's going to be an absolute blast. All right. Am I going to watch Purdue? No. Am I going to watch Indiana? Probably not, because they're playing 2 really bad teams. If they lose, I'll go back and rewatch them and figure out what happened. But I'm totally locked in to all of the games. I stayed up late. I watched Nebraska and Cincinnati last night. Cincinnati just punched me in the gut with the way that they lost that game. So much fun watching it, though. We got Baylor and Auburn tonight, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, and Florida State. I mean, just so many great games. And Shehan Jeyarajah, who covers college football for CBS, he joins the show in 4 minutes to talk about it.
tidbits in today's sports world. It's here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's the Indy Sports Ticket YouTube page, maybe you're listening on the Indy Sports Ticket app, maybe you're listening on 1430 AM, or maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith, where you can follow me there and watch the show. You can also follow our current guest, Shehan Jeyarajah, on X at Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan covers the college football world for CBS Sports. He does a great job doing it. Make sure you go read all this stuff over at cbssports.com. Shehan, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I am so excited for just everything happening. Cincinnati and Nebraska last night was awesome until the end. I don't understand why we're throwing a go ball when we're in field goal range, but I don't know. Shehan, I love talking to you specifically about college football because I'm just a headline guy. Like, I love college football, but I just get wrapped up in all of the headlines. I was really surprised last night. I was very impressed. That's a better word, by Cincinnati's defense. Was that more about Cincinnati's defense being good, or did you walk away from that game more concerned about the Nebraska offense?
Well, I think that Cincinnati secondary fought a lot harder than I expected. And, I think that the running game for Nebraska was something that we had some questions about. But I think that some of that also has to do with the growth that they've done on the defensive line. Obviously, Dante Corleone looked as healthy as he's ever looked. He had a tremendous game last night, but it looked like he had a little bit of help at linebacker and at defensive end. And so I do think that there is legitimate reason to believe that Cincinnati has made major strides on that side of the ball. And, look, they should have been in a position to win that game if they don't make that mistake at the end. And I think that's a really impressive position to be, by the way, in front of a crowd that was very much a hostile one.
It was. And against a team in Nebraska that I don't have them making the college football playoff, but I've seen some people make that prediction. What are you expecting from Nebraska this year in the Big Ten?
Well, I think that there's a couple pieces of this, and one is they have a very manageable schedule, which I think will be really positive for them. And so when people are picking them to get into that playoff conversation, they very much are viewing it, I think, in an Indiana type way, right? Where you have the opportunity to go through. They only play two ranked teams, Michigan and Penn State. If you beat Michigan, which is very doable, like 11-1 is on the table. Now, what I'll say is that I was a little concerned by what I saw from Nebraska. I thought that their run defense did not look fixed whatsoever after losing defensive coordinator Tony White. I thought, again, they struggle to, I think, protect in the run at a high level. And so the question for me just becomes like, okay, well, if they aren't going to be a consistent running team, if they are still going to have some issues defensively, all of a sudden some of these other games look just a little bit more difficult, right? Even if you look at an Iowa, UCLA, USC, Minnesota. So I think that I'm a little bit more modest than some other people on them. But again, 8 or 9 wins, I think, should very much be an expectation with this schedule. Joined
by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, where he covers college football. You can go read all this stuff over at cbssports.com. Shehan, I believe that this is correct. Your alma mater, Baylor, plays tonight against Auburn. What should we expect in this game, and what do you think about Hugh Freeze saying that 3 potential quarterbacks are going to play and they all have their own offensive coordinator?
Yeah, there's been a lot of noise coming out of that Auburn camp the past couple of weeks, whether it's, like you said, the 3 play callers, the 3 quarterbacks, the new national champions being named. They take this moment to retire Cam Newton's number. Like, it feels like there's a lot going on there that doesn't have to do with just straight up playing football. And, this is, I think, a huge game for Hugh Freeze. This is the first time since 1950 that they've had 4 straight losing seasons, 2 of them, of course, under Hugh Freeze. He's the first coach to have 2 straight losing seasons to open his tenure at Auburn since, I believe, the 1930s. So, this is historic levels of incompetence. And they go on the road. and play a really tough Baylor team in non-conference. I think that for them going in, I mean, like Baylor's got a great quarterback in Sawyer Robertson, a great running back in Bryson Washington, 4 starters back on the offensive line, a pretty deep receiving core. The big question for Baylor is going to be whether their defensive backs can hang with Auburn's receivers. Auburn's got probably a top 5 receiver group in the country, though a couple of them are dealing with injuries. So this is a game that I think that Auburn has to go and win to really get things started right for Hugh Freeze in year 3, because the reality is, like, getting back to a bowl game isn't doing it for anybody. They have to get to that 8 to 9 win conversation with the amount that they invested into this roster.
Yeah, and that's the thing about being at a place like Auburn. Like, you're expected to be good immediately. And with the way that we've seen college football change, that is a little more doable than what it used to be. I was talking about Purdue to open my show, and I'm sure you really envy that, right? I'm sure you just want to talk about Purdue all the time. They're bringing back one starter, and so how do you feel about fans expecting these quick turnarounds in this world where there's just all these transfers?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I feel like we're in the transition of 2 worlds in a sense, and what I mean by that is, again, we're kind of getting to that moment where I think that rosters are going to start to stabilize a little bit more. But the other piece of that is that there are a lot of players who are talented who maybe 2 or 3 years ago would have entered the transfer portal and at this point won't. So I think that if you are trying to build the roster completely through the portal, it's just harder to do than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Because, here's the reality, right? If you have an AAC player who's pretty good, well, he could actually just get compensated to stay at his school and be a starter. Even if you talk about a lower tier ACC school, those guys are also getting paid now too. So I think that the quick flip stuff is going to be a little tougher than it's been in years past, especially at the Big Ten level. And so I think that Barry Odom has very much taken the right approach and said, hey, you know what, like, we're going to get some young players in here. We're probably not going to be all that great in year 1, but we're going to develop. And I think that you look at how the best Purdue teams historically have been built, it's through development. Purdue is a place that I think you need to work on a 2 to 3 year timeline. So I think that very much for this team, it's probably going to look pretty bad in year 1, but it's more about trying to figure out what are the long-term pieces you can take forward.
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, where he covers college football. Everyone is very jacked up for Texas and Ohio State for very obvious reasons, right? It's Ohio State, it's Texas, it's Arch Manning, it's this Julian Sain kid that's supposed to be a stud as well. And while everyone's excited for that, and I am more intrigued by LSU and Clemson just because of what I know about them. Like there's a world where Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier were the number 1 and number 2 overall picks, playing quarterback for those teams. And you talk about how, like, this quick flip stuff is really tough to do. LSU, I believe, is bringing in like 17 transfers. It's like the highest rated transfer portal class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. Everyone's focused on Texas and Ohio State because of Arch Manning and all those things. But as I said, I'm more intrigued by LSU and Clemson. What are you interested in terms of the nightcap tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think that LSU Clemson is going to be a tremendous game. The thing with Texas Ohio State is that these 2 teams, especially Ohio State, are going to be so different by the end of the year because of how much turnover Ohio State has on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't know if we're going to get the best of Ohio State tomorrow. And I think that, there's definitely a chance that Texas comes out and wins pretty handily. With this LSU Clemson game, I think that it is such a tone-setting game for both of these programs. I'll say I picked LSU to win the national championship. I think they've got the best returning quarterback in the country in Garrett Nussmeier. And you talk about trying to fix things through the portal. Here's the thing that I like about what they did is that they were really clear about.
All good.
Okay, there we go. They were really able to come in and focusing on a position group specifically. They said in the secondary, we need to be better. So we're going to bring in 4 or 5 guys to compete for 2 spots, as opposed to trying to rebuild a whole roster through the portal. So I think their strategy is going to work. On the Clemson side of things, like, this is Clemson again. This is very much what we came to expect in the 2010s. And the reason that I say that is twofold. One, they have the best defensive line in the country, which they haven't had in a few years, and they are stacked once again at receiver. That's probably been the biggest fall off of this program from 2018 to 2023. Well, I think that with the group that they have there, they are back. So I'm really excited about this game. I think back to 2021 when Georgia plays Clemson in the season opener and Georgia wins on a pick 6 and a 10-3 decision. I think that the winner of this game also might be able to use this as a lot of momentum to head into the season and maybe make themselves a legitimate national championship favorite.
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, who covers college football over at CBSSports.com. You're the first person I've heard pick LSU, which I don't mind because, like, if the transfer portal class hits and, as you said, like, they have Nussmeier, like, they're going to be really good. I have seen a lot of people pick Penn State for a slightly different reason. Obviously, Drew Allar's back, but they're returning 14 starters. And I hear people say this, and I'm like, well, as you said, Clemson, like, they're going to have probably the best defensive line in the country this year. They have 16 starters from last year coming back. I like Cade Klubnik more than Drew Allar. Like, why do you think people are so focused in on Penn State and all these returners and Drew Allar, but they're not as focused on Clemson?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a couple of reasons. You know, when you look at Penn State, think back to the last 2 national champions. In 2023, Michigan retains a bunch of guys who could have gone to the NFL, adds a couple of key pieces, and they win the national championship in a culmination year. In 2024, Ohio State convinces a couple of guys to not go to the NFL. They add some key pieces, and they win the national championship. And I think that the thought process is that Penn State is very much that team this year. They retain Drew Allar, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Janae Sutton. They bring in a couple of key pieces, including Trevor Pena coming in at receiver, which I think is a huge move. I think that they have a chance to be one of the best offensive lines in the country with what they bring back. And so I think that there's so many natural parallels between sort of the team that could not get over the top from the Big Ten heading into a culmination year. Now, I think that Clemson very much is in that conversation too. You know, I think that they, to me, are an easy top 5 team. They're definitely one of the ones that I have considered to be a national championship team. I think the big question for people is, one, you know, how do they hang on the offensive line? That was kind of a little bit of an issue for them last year when they played against Texas. And the other thing too is, do the receivers take the step that we need them to take? You know, do they become one of the most dynamic groups in the country? I think that they need that to happen to be a true national championship contender. And also, I mean, look, obviously Clemson is a very, very talented team, but, you know, some of these other recruiting juggernauts just stack talent from a depth perspective in a different kind of way. And heading into a playoff where you need to win 3 or 4 games, I think that sort of stuff starts to add up. So I think that Penn State and Clemson for me are very similar tier. And again, I think there are potentially up to, you know, 8 or 9 teams that have national championship upside.
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, where he covers college football. We're getting ready for week 1, which started last night. A lot of big games tomorrow, Baylor and Auburn tonight. I'm glad you brought up the offensive line struggles of Clemson last year, because it allows me to ask one of my favorite questions to ask people. So people or fans will often get excited for stuff like this. It's like we're bringing back all of these guys. Like, so for example, Clemson is bringing back 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen from last year. But like you said, the offensive line struggled a little bit from time to time, especially in that game against Texas. So I guess this isn't a Clemson specific question, but how do you balance, like, yes, we have guys coming back, but those guys coming back weren't necessarily great all the time last year?
Well, I think that I always probably assume that if you have guys coming back, and especially if you have a unit that's coming back, you can expect maybe 10 to 20% improvement. You know, the cool thing about college football is that it is a sport of very young people. And so, like, you do get to see a level of development in the sport that you don't necessarily get to see once you get to the NFL. Like, the NFL is not a developmental league at all. So I think that that's the question, though. You know, you have to find that balance of, is 10 to 20% better on the offensive line enough for Clemson? Because they're probably not going to jump 50 to 70% better. Like, they're probably not going to go from being a top 40 unit to being a top 10 unit. But again, you know, I think that they have enough there that was very good to compensate. I mean, again, we talk about that defensive line. And so, look, the other piece of this as well is that there is not a perfect team in the country this year, because, yeah, Clemson was a good, not great offensive line last year. Well, Texas was a great offensive line, and they lost both of their tackles and also their guard. So, like, you know, you kind of have to find that balance between, okay, well, how much do you trust development coming up? How much do you trust experience on the field? It's definitely something that you're constantly balancing when you're trying to make projections.
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, who does a great job of covering college football for CBS Sports. You talk about, like, the balance of, like, making projections with new guys and returners and all these things. And you mentioned earlier pretty briefly about Texas and Ohio State, how we probably won't see, like, the best version of Ohio State tomorrow, and that could lead to them losing. What about the Texas side of things? Because it's Arch Manning's first start, like, or I guess it's not his first start. It's his first start in, like, a big game, like Ohio State, just a slight step up from UTSA last year. And it's not only his first big start, but they're replacing 4 offensive linemen as well. What do you kind of expect from this inexperienced Texas offense tomorrow against this Ohio State defense that's replacing 8 starters and has a new defensive coordinator?
Well, a couple of things. You know, I think that I think that they're going to be okay on the offensive line, especially, again, you know, Ohio State last year, you talk about guys like Jack Sawyer in that unit, they're gone now. And I don't know if this is going to be the best version of Ohio State's defensive line that we've seen. The other thing, too, though, is that Steve Sarkisian tends to get up for these early season non-conference games. You know, they went into Michigan last year and kind of tore them apart. The year before that, they go and beat Nick Saban at Alabama. They compete with Nick Saban the year before, even in a year where they only win 8 games. And I think that they're going to be able to do some of the same thing. If you give Steve Sarkisian 6 months, I think he's going to come up with a really good game plan. And again, like, I'm really curious as well. You mentioned Matt Patricia coming in. This is a very different ball game, coaching in college football at Ohio State, than anything that he would have done at the NFL level. Yeah, obviously, you know, schemes are good and all, but, like, it's just a different kind of challenge when you don't necessarily know the quality of the personnel that you have. So I think that Texas is going to be able to come in and put up a big performance. You know, it's funny, if you go back 20 years to Texas's 2005 national championship season, it started by going on the road and playing Ohio State and beating them in a highly ranked matchup. And that was kind of their introduction to the country en route to a national championship. And I don't know if Texas will get to the national championship level this year, but I do think that there are a lot of parallels in this game.
Okay, that's interesting. I do want to ask, it's really weird. I don't know if it's because this game's on Sunday, but I feel like of all the big games this weekend, Notre Dame and Miami, bringing back Catholics versus convicts, like, I feel like it's getting the least amount of publicity. I'm very intrigued. Like, CJ Carr seems to have barely won the starting job at Notre Dame. Like, once Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey left Georgia, like, Carson Beck wasn't very good last year, so now he's at Miami. What are you kind of hoping to see and expecting to see in that Notre Dame and Miami game on Sunday night?
Well, I do think there will be a huge gap between the quarterbacks, to be honest. I think that Carson Beck is a substantially better player than CJ Carr. And, you know, you look at his performance at Georgia last year, and I think, like you said, they lost kind of their key playmakers at pass catcher. And also, his unit had the most drops of any unit in the country. So, like, I think that they were a bad receiver unit last year at Georgia. But all that said, I give Notre Dame the edge almost everywhere else. Like, I think that defensively, these programs are night and day. I expect some improvement certainly from Miami on the defensive side of the ball under new defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman, but I don't think it's going to rise to the level of what Notre Dame will be in 2025. And then, on top of that, Notre Dame, of course, tremendous on the offensive line. They've got the best running back in the country in Jeremiah Love. I think that they're pretty good at receiver as well, if some guys can grow up. So, I think that this honestly could be a pretty easy Notre Dame win. I think that, again, the place where I like Miami is at quarterback and, again, on the offensive line where Mario Cristobal is known for putting out good units, but I just don't know that they're going to be able to hang defensively with the kind of unit that Notre Dame's putting on the field.
Yeah, that's my concern with this game as well. And that's the thing with Notre Dame. I think they're bringing back, I think it's 11 guys from last year. As you mentioned, Jeremiah Love, they're bringing back their leading receiver from last year and a lot of guys on defense. And that's kind of how they won games last year. They ran the football, they played good defense, and Riley Leonard seemed to always make the 4 plays a game that he needed to make in order for them to win. I'm curious if CJ Carr is going to be able to do that this year, but it starts in a big way on Sunday. That game's going to be awesome. You mentioned Carson Beck and his time at Georgia last year. And, I keep going back to this whole returners thing. Alabama's bringing back 14 guys from last year. Ty Simpson was a former 5-star guy. I feel like, and this is a really weird thing for me to say, and it's probably wrong, I feel like Alabama and Georgia are both kind of flying under the radar a little bit. What do you kind of expect from them this season?
Yeah, I don't think it's unfair at all to say that they're flying under the radar. To start with Georgia, I'm really curious what they look like on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, it's going to be good, but I don't think it's unfair to say that there's been a little bit of attrition since that 21 and 22 team. This, especially on the defensive line in the middle, has not necessarily been an elite unit since Jalen Carter left. And while the defensive numbers have been good, they haven't been jaw-dropping like they were during that run. And so I think that it's a little bit of a transition season for them. First-year starting quarterback with Gunnar Stockton coming in, a couple new guys on the offensive line. Now, the one thing that you do say about them is that they made some big swings at receiver with Zachariah Branch coming in, kind of leading the way, along with Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. So I think that this is a team that will have some moments, but I just don't know if they're necessarily as dominant as they've been in years past. Alabama, I think, is actually one of the more undervalued teams in the country this year. It's funny. Last year, I think that people were a little too quick to write off what this team was, because they had their ups, they had their downs, but this isn't unusual for a first-year coaching staff, even at a blue blood program, right? I mean, you think back to Kirby Smart taking over for Mark Richt, and they win 7 games in year 1. You think about Nick Saban, obviously taking over a much worse situation, but they win 7 games in year 1. I think that this is a situation where maybe you see a real year 2 jump. I love that they're putting Ty Simpson into the lineup. While Jalen Milroe was a tremendous talent, I think that you had to compensate for his deficiencies a lot, and that won't be the case with Ty Simpson. They bring back 3 or 4 guys on the offensive line, including Caden Proctor. They have a defense that should be a top 5 to 10 unit in the country. I'll tell you what, one of my colleagues, Matt Zen, has picked them to win the national championship. And I think that's very much a fair expectation for Alabama to be in that conversation.
That's how I feel about it too. They're, like I said, like you said, there's a lot of talent. Ty Simpson should hopefully be a better thrower of the football than Jalen Milroe was. I loved your point on Georgia. If you go back to the early Kirby Smart days, his run defense, they give up 80 yards per game on average. Last year was at 115 per game on average. And so the middle of the defense just hasn't been as good. 2 more questions for you, Shehan, and I will let you go. What are you expecting from Colorado and North Carolina this year?
Yeah. So for Colorado, it's interesting because, they've structured so much of their team over the last 2 years to feature Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And so now, while you have a couple of big-time talents, you don't have guys like that. And Caden Salter will be the first guy to take snaps in week one, but he's not necessarily a scramble to throw type of player. He's more of a scramble to run type of player. So I don't expect him to be able to do the same sort of buying time and doing acrobatics and all the sort of stuff that we saw from Shedeur Sanders. So this offensive line has to be better if they're going to have a chance to take a step forward. Defensively, though, I think that they actually will be pretty good, especially after bringing in Jaheim Otis from Alabama. But, I think that this is a team that's going to be right around the bowl eligibility mark. I think they will make it, but I don't expect them to replicate the 9 wins that we saw last year. North Carolina is an enigma to me because, they just don't have a whole lot of sure things on their roster. Gio Lopez coming over from South Alabama, I think, was a solid get for them. I think he'll be able to be a little bit of a playmaker for them. But they have some corners that NFL folks feel good about, but is that enough to build a whole defense around? I don't know. They were one of the worst defenses in the country last year. I don't know what they have on the offensive line. I don't know if they have a whole lot of playmakers on offense. So I think this is a North Carolina team that especially early will struggle, but I will say they have one of the easier schedules in the country. So they have the ability to build some momentum towards the end of the year, but I just don't know if this is going to be a very good team.
Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, where he covers college football and does a great job of it. Last thing for you, is there a team this year who could kind of be the Indiana of last year where no one really sees them coming and then you look up and they're 11-1?
Well, I think, Nebraska's been a popular pick for that. Like we talked about off the top of the episode, I think that they have a very manageable schedule. If they can beat Michigan, that might frankly be enough to kind of get into the conversation. But I think that they're a team that very much could step into that conversation. It'll be interesting to see in a similar lens whether Iowa can do it. They lost a key player in Reese Vanderzee at receiver for at least a month, and that might be a damper on things. But I think that they're an undervalued team coming into the year. And it's interesting to try to look around the Big 12 and ACC. I think the Big 12 schedule is probably too complicated to have somebody slip through like an Indiana did. But I think that when you look out to the ACC, I'm intrigued by a team like Duke. Now, I will say, I think that Duke did not exactly give us their best in their opener against Elon. It was 10-10 at the half before they pulled away. But I do think that they feel like they improved dramatically at the quarterback position, going to Darian Mensah. He had nearly 400 yards yesterday. And again, they have a very manageable schedule as well. So they're a team that I think could be in that 10-win range coming down the stretch.
Okay, good to know. Shehan, thanks for your time, man. Do you have any articles coming out here soon?
I've released a couple things this week. I wrote something on Boise State on Tuesday, something on Baylor's quarterback on Thursday, and I'll be out at Baylor Auburn tonight, so keep tuned for coverage from that game.
Oh, let's go. That's going to be awesome. Shehan, thanks for your time, man. I look forward to hopefully having you on again throughout the season.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is Shehan Jeyarajah. You can follow him on X at Shehan Jeyarajah. Does a great job covering the sport of college football. An excellent writer as well. Oh, I freaking love college football. So great. Zack Gray is joining the show coming up at 11:40. He's going to help you bet all of the games coming up this weekend. Big NFL news. Micah Parsons was traded to the Cowboys. I'll tell you my thoughts on it in 3.5 minutes.
Tickets at noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Big news in the NFL yesterday. Micah Parsons officially traded to the Green Bay Packers. So I believe I told you to take to win the NFC North. Hopefully you did that before their odds were from like plus 230 to plus 165. They're now favored to win that division, and they should be. They answered their biggest question. They needed a pass rusher desperately. Their leading sack man last year was Shehan Jeyarajah, who had 7.5 sacks last year. He was their leader. No one else had more than 5. Now you're bringing in a guy in Micah Parsons who's had 12 sacks or more every year of his career to start his career. Premier pass rusher. That was the one thing that the Packers didn't have. They have it now. So watch out. Green Bay doing predictions week. Next week may or may not have them winning the NFC. You'll have to come back next week to find out about that one. For the Cowboys, I don't mind the deal. They just did it too late. You know, they opened up all of this cap space, which is cool. You know, we love cap space here in Indy. The issue is free agency doesn't happen for like 10 more months. You got a while before you can use all that money. You have a while before the draft where you can help replace Micah Parsons. They got 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark, who's a good player, or used to be. He wasn't very good last year. I would say that Micah Parsons is 1,000% worth that from the Packers. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, they've reached a point for me where they're like the Sacramento Kings in the NBA. If I was a general manager in the NBA and the Kings wanted to make a trade for anything, I would immediately be like, what do you want to do? Because you can take advantage of the Kings in the NBA. It happens to them all the time, and you can take advantage of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. This was a dumb deal on their part. They didn't get nearly enough for Micah because they waited too long to trade him. If they do this before free agency, before the draft, then they could have gotten significantly more. Listen to some of these deals that have happened in the past. Laramie Tunsil, when he was traded from the Dolphins to the Texans gave up 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, a corner in Johnson Badamosi, and an offensive tackle in Julian Davenport. Laramie Tunsil, at that time, was not better than what Micah Parsons is now. And the Dolphins got more from Houston than the Cowboys got from the Packers. When Jamal Adams was traded from the Jets to the Seahawks gave up 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a safety named Bradley McDougald. They got more, the Jets did, by trading Jamal Adams, a strong safety, a significantly less important position compared to edge rusher, than the Cowboys got for Micah Parsons, one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. Well, Jonathan, what about other pass rushers? Great question. Khalil Mack. When he was traded from the Raiders to the Bears got 2 first-round picks, a 6th-round pick, and a 3rd-round pick, more than what the Cowboys got for Micah Parsons. And then when the Khalil Mack got traded to the Chargers from the Bears got 2 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 6th-round pick. Again, more than the Cowboys got for Micah Parsons, who was definitely better than what Khalil Mack was at that time in his career when he went from Chicago to L.A. Deshaun Watson got more for the Texans than Micah Parsons did. 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and 2 4th-round picks. That makes sense, though. Like, at the time, Deshaun Watson was projected, to hopefully come back and be an awesome player once again. Jay Cutler, when he was traded to the Bears gave up Kyle Orton, former Boilermaker, a pair of first-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick. Jay Cutler, not better than Micah Parsons. And the Bears got more for him than the Cowboys got for Micah Parsons. Ricky Williams, twice, went for more than what Micah Parsons did. The Saints gave up their entire draft to draft Ricky Williams 5th overall. The Dolphins then sent 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick to the Saints in 2002 to acquire a running back, which I get it. The NFL was different back then, but a running back then was not more important than a pass rusher now. And the Cowboys very simply didn't get enough for the best player on their team. When you're dealing the best player on your team, you have to get an awesome haul back, and the Cowboys did not. Simple as that. They should have waited, made him play this year, franchise tagged him, and then moved him. That's what they should have done, and they didn't. And that's why they are the Cowboys. Big college football weekend coming up. I'm going to give you my thoughts and my questions on the big games coming up tonight and tomorrow in the world of college football here in 3 minutes.
It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show. It's hour number 2 before a loaded college football weekend. I'm excited. You're hopefully excited. Oh, man. Someone asked me about the Colts in the chat earlier. I forgot who it was, but like, what happens if, Daniel Jones wins 10-plus games this year as the Colts starter? And first things first, I don't operate in fantasy land. That is absolutely not going to happen. And if it does happen, then they'll extend him. And that is all the Colts that I want to talk today because it's college football weekend. Big game tonight. We got Baylor playing Auburn and then a slew of games tomorrow. Coach Belichick, primetime, Monday Night Football. It's glorious. Had Shehan Jeyarajah on earlier. He was awesome. We'll have that up after the show. And then Zack Gray is going to join me coming up here in about 40 minutes. He'll have bets. It's going to be great. So, college football games. Let's start tonight. Baylor versus Auburn. Auburn is a very interesting football team this year because they're going to play potentially 3 quarterbacks tonight, and each quarterback has their own offensive coordinator. Each quarterback has their own guy calling plays for them, which is interesting. I don't know if I like this or not. This is one of the cool things about college football. Like, this would never happen in the NFL. It would never happen. Like, could you imagine if the Colts had 3 different offensive coordinators, one for Anthony Richardson, one for Daniel Jones, and then one for Riley Leonard? And they're like, yeah, we don't really know who we're going to play week 1 against the Dolphins. We're probably going to play all 3. Like, that to me is just, it's a fascinating thing. It's something that we've never really seen done before. I hope it goes terribly. And I think that it will, because having the same guy under center, snap in and snap out, I think just makes it a little bit easier. So very intrigued to kind of see what they look like when it comes to Baylor versus Auburn. Shehan earlier kind of gave you the rundown. Baylor's got a good quarterback. They should be able to run the football. Apparently they have a really good running back as well. Should be a fun game. Auburn only favored by 2.5 points in that one. Ohio State, though, like, this is the game that everyone is kind of locked into, right? Like what are they going to look like? And I don't really know for either team, right? Arch Manning's first start, 4 new offensive linemen. The defense is supposed to be really, really good. That is one of the things about them. Like, the defense is supposed to be a top 5 unit in college football this season. They returned 6 of their 11 starters from last year on their defense. They only bring back 3 starters on offense, a right guard, a wide receiver, and a running back. Everything else is new, but with Coach Sarkisian, I just expect for the offense to be good because everywhere he's ever been, the offense has been really good. The defense was good last year. We'll see if they can match that again for this upcoming season. So, how does Arch Manning look? That's really where it all starts. Is he better than Quinn Ewers was last year? I don't think he will be off the rip. I do think, though, that by the end of the season, he will be. Wouldn't be surprised, though, if he got off to a rough start because it is a game on the road. First big game, 4 new offensive linemen. You're playing in the Horseshoe, hostile environments. It's a really tough place to make your first big-time start. So, very kind of intrigued to see how Arch Manning looks. Obviously, the new offensive linemen. Can they hear Arch Manning? Are there Are there protection breakdowns? Like how is that going to look? And then, of course, is the Texas defense going to be as good as everyone thinks? Because offense in the NFL or in the NFL, college football, whatever, is hard. Like, it just is. And is the Texas defense early in the year? Because I do think as the year goes on, the Texas offense will improve. Is the Texas defense going to be good enough early in the year to kind of keep Texas in games if they struggle offensively? Because I do think that is a potential reality for them, especially against Ohio State, who no one really knows what the defense is going to look like because there's a new defensive coordinator and they're replacing 8 of their 11 starters on defense. from last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was a low-scoring, kind of slug-it-out kind of game. Like, both teams are going to be talented, but there's just a lot of new faces, and camaraderie and cohesion and all those things really matter. So very intrigued to kind of see how Texas looks with all their new faces. Same thing goes for Ohio State. This Julian Sayin kid is supposed to be outstanding. And it makes sense because when was the last time Ohio State didn't have a really good quarterback? Kyle McCord, maybe? That's probably it. And that guy was a 6th-round pick this last season. I'm also curious to see, how does Ohio State go about getting Jeremiah Smith the ball? As I said, Zack Gray, he's going to join the show here in about 30 minutes. Big Ohio State fan. I'm going to ask him a question that I know he's not going to like, but that's okay. If you don't remember, Kyle McCord was Ohio State's starting quarterback 2 years ago, and the offense wasn't very good. Kyle McCord, highly touted guy coming out of high school, and it kind of felt like they struggled to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball with Kyle McCord at quarterback. Could that be an issue this year for Ohio State? Do they have a quarterback incapable of getting Jeremiah Smith the football? Do they have an offensive coordinator, new one, Brian Hartline? How does he do? And, calling, I doubt he's going to call plays. It's probably going to be Ryan Day. But like, how does the offense look, because with a new play caller, because it was Chip Kelly last year, you're going to be hard pressed to find anyone better at calling plays in college football than Chip Kelly. So how do they go about getting Jeremiah Smith the football? And of course, how does Ohio State's defense look, replacing 8 starters, bringing in a new defensive coordinator while playing a team in Texas that, yes, there's a lot of newness, but it is Steve Sarkisian. And you know that he's going to have it loaded up and ready to go early in the season. So very intrigued by that. Alabama's going to play Florida State. No one's talking about Alabama, and they're going to be good again. They are projected to have a top 3 defense in the country. James Smith is a guy that Alabama kind of hopes emerges into an elite defensive lineman. LT Overton is back. He was a good run defender for Alabama last year. Deontay Lawson is back. That's a 5th-year senior, right, linebacker, kind of in the middle of the defense. Zabian Brown at corner started last year. He's back. Bray Hubbard's supposed to be one of the best safeties in the country. So, there's a lot of talent on that Alabama defense, on a team that returns 14 of their 22 starters from last year. That is close to the top of the country. 8 of those 14 starters played defense last year. So they're only replacing 3 guys on defense. So we'll see how the Crimson Tide defense looks this year. Offensively, I'm not really worried. It's Kalen DeBoer. They're going to be good offensively. Ty Simpson, former 5-star quarterback, should throw the football better than Jalen Milroe did last year. Ryan Williams is back. He's no longer 17. As good as Ryan Williams was last year, I think people miss that Jeremy Bernard led Alabama in receptions last year. He's back. Jam Miller, their leading rusher last year, he's back. Caden Proctor, a probable first-round pick at left tackle, is back. Parker Brailsford, one of the best centers in the country, he's back. The offensive line is going to be good, and I think that Alabama is going to be a little more explosive throwing the football. Okay, and there's a lot of returners. 14 of 22 starters from last year, both of their coordinators, the head coach is back. They are going to be better this year than they were last year. And if Ty Simpson lives up to his 5-star status, then Alabama could 1,000% be a team competing to win a national title this season. Right? Last year was a weird year for Kalen DeBoer. He lost 4 games, which is the most that he's lost in the season as a Division I head football coach. Like that dude can flat out coach. I expect them to be better this year than they were last year. The nightcap tomorrow night, we got LSU and Clemson. Can't wait. Garrett Nussmeier, our very good friend of the show, Kevin Potts, who does a really good job with the NFL draft and evaluating talent. He's got Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik as his top 2 rated quarterbacks in this draft class. Now, obviously, that's all going to switch around as the season progresses. But these are 2 guys who can flat out sling it and have experience. Clemson has not one, but two dominant defensive linemen that are going to be first-round picks. One of them is going to be the first defensive player taken in the draft, more than likely. His name is TJ Parker. Dude's just an absolute beast. You heard Shehan Jeyarajah say it earlier. He mentioned how like Clemson should have the best defensive line in the country. So you've got like this Clemson team that brings back 16 starters from last year against LSU, who brings in a ton of transfers, right? And is ranked the best transfer portal class in the country by 24/7 Sports. So there is some intrigue with LSU's roster. There's a little bit more unknown. Clemson is supposed to be a national title contender. And we can say that as a statement because we know who's on this team. We saw all them play last year. We saw them give Texas a pretty tough game in the first round of the college football playoff. So like you can say that pretty definitively about Clemson. LSU thinks that they're a national title contender. Offensively, I think they'll be fine. They've been very explosive on offense since Brian Kelly took over. The question is the defense. The defense has not been very good the last 2 years. And they're going to have an opportunity against a very good Clemson offense to make a statement week 1. And Clemson's going to have an opportunity to make a statement against LSU tomorrow night. This whole season is going to be fascinating, but Shehan Jeyarajah said this earlier, and I think he's right. This is a tone-setting game for LSU and Clemson. They both have very big goals, very big aspirations, and winning this, what is going to be, I think, a really tough game for both sides, is going to be an opportunity to kind of stamp like, yes, we are good enough to compete for a national title. Miami versus Notre Dame. I have more questions than answers about both of these teams. CJ Carr barely beat out Kenny Minchey. Carson Beck wasn't great at Georgia last year. He went from being the projected first pick of the NFL draft to not only having to go back to school, but having to transfer away to Miami. Notre Dame, I am going to pick them because I just know more about them. Like Notre Dame is going to run the ball well with Jeremiah Love. I know that because that's what they did last year. They're going to be good on defense again, bringing back 6 of their 11 starters from last year. The question is going to be, can CJ Carr find a way like Riley Leonard did last year? Can he make the 4 or 5 plays that he needs to make, whether that's converting on 3rd and 7, lowering the shoulder and picking up a big first down late? Can he make the couple of plays necessary in order for Notre Dame to win games? Miami, a lot of newness, right? They're bringing back 8 starters from last year. That's it. Everyone on their offense is new, except for their left guard, and right tackle. None of Miami's skill guys last year were very good, except for Cam Ward, obviously. Like, none of their receivers made an NFL roster. None of their running backs made an NFL roster. And I do think that Carson Beck needs great players around him to be good, because when Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey left, he started to struggle. So did Miami reload at the skill positions enough for Carson Beck to be a really good player? Well, we're going to find out. Defensively, they bring back 5 starters on a defense that struggled a bit last year, so we'll see if they can fix those issues. But Miami's supposed to be really good. So is Notre Dame. That game's going to be awesome. Can't wait for the games. They're going to be just an absolute blast. Football is back. Oh, it's going to be so great. Football's back. I'm so stoked. And it's going to be awesome. So betting means like that's back in full action this week. It's going to be awesome. So I've got bets that I'm very, very excited to make. And yeah, I just can't wait. It's going to be awesome. So I'm going to give you my 4 bets for what I think are 4 of the 5 biggest games of the weekend. I'm going to give those to you here in 4 minutes.
it may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. You are 20 minutes away from hearing some great bets from the one and only Zack Gray, who joins the show, like I said, in 20 minutes. So before he joins, I'm going to give you my 5 bets for the 5 biggest games of the college football weekend. So first, let's start tonight. Baylor playing host to Auburn. They are 2.5 points underdogs. The Baylor Bears are. And I don't know how you can't take Baylor in this game. Baylor's getting 2.5 points when they know what they have at quarterback against a team that's going to play 3 of them tonight. 3 different quarterbacks are going to touch the field tonight for Auburn. And only, if things go according to plan, only 1 for Baylor. I don't like betting on a team that doesn't know who their starting quarterback is. I especially a team that's going to run 3 different dudes out there. Okay, like that, to me, screams dysfunction. That screams we don't have a good quarterback. Because usually when you're deciding between 3 guys, it's not because all 3 are really good. It's usually because none of them are, and you don't really know which one to go with. So I'm going to take Baylor tonight plus 2.5, just because I don't like betting on teams that don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be. Ohio State, Texas, biggest game by, the little numbers on the screen of the weekend. Ohio State is a 1.5 point favorite, and I'm going to take them to cover the 1.5 points. Arch Manning and 4 new offensive linemen making their first big starts on the road at Ohio State just sounds like a losing recipe. I understand that Ohio State is replacing a lot of positions as well. Fully understand that, but they're at home. That is such an advantage in the world of college football. Right? It's like Julian saying, he's going to wake up in his normal bed, and he's going to go to his normal locker, and he's going to eat the same pregame meal that he eats before practice, and all those things. Like, you're just in your routine a little bit more than what Arch Manning and those Texas starting offensive linemen are going to be. Ohio State also is an incredibly tough place to go in and win. So I'm taking Ohio State minus 1.5. Alabama, they're a 13.5 point favorite on the road against Florida State. And I think that this is an absolute drubbing. I think they beat the brakes off of Florida State. Florida State, they've been running their mouths all off season, right? Nick Saban isn't there to save you. That's what they've been saying, which is just absurd. It just is. And so, I think that they just, it's up to 14.5 now. Jeez. Yeah. I think that they just walk in there. They handle business in a really, really big way. I think Alabama makes a bit of a statement that won't be projected that way because everyone's going to be like, Florida State wasn't very good last year. Here it comes again. Mike Norvell, get ready to get fired. So it'll be an interesting thing just to kind of see what happens there. But I do think that Kalen DeBoer and Alabama get off to a pretty emphatic start to begin the season. Richard chiming in saying he put $25 on Alabama minus 14. I like it. Clemson is a 4.5 point favorite over LSU, and I am 1,000% taking Clemson. I forgot that today's Friday. I'm just going to go ahead and make this official. My official prediction for the 2025 college football season is that Clemson is going to win the national title. I'm going to write that down. That way I don't forget, even though I don't think that I would forget that anyway. I really like Klubnik. They had a good team last year. They're all back for the most part. 16 returning starters. That is the second most in the country, only behind Arizona State, who brings back 17. I like Cade Klubnik more than a lot of the other quarterbacks in the country. So I'm going to go with them to win the national title, and the road to that begins tonight. They are literally Penn State with a head coach that has won 2 national titles. That's who they are. I think they're simply better than LSU is. 16 returning players, including their quarterback, 2 of the best defensive linemen in the country. LSU's only bringing back 7 guys. There's a lot of new pieces. They're on the road in Death Valley. And let's also not forget that LSU has lost not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 straight season openers, which is kind of a crazy thing. Like that's a lot of season openers to lose in a row. It just is. So, yeah. So there you go. Clemson minus 4.5 tonight. The march to a national title begins. Notre Dame is a 2.5-point favorite on the road against Miami, and I'm going to take Notre Dame minus 2.5. I just simply know more about them, and if I'm going to bet money on somebody, I want to bet on the team that I know more about. I know that Notre Dame's going to run the football well. I know that Notre Dame's going to have a good offensive line because they always do. Jeremiah Love, one of the best running backs in all of college football. I know that their defense is going to play well. Do I have questions about CJ Carr? Yes. But I also have questions about, it seems like every other really important quarterback in the country. Like I've got questions about Arch Manning and Julian Sayin and Ty Simpson and so on and so forth. So very, very excited to kind of see how Notre Dame looks tonight in this new era of CJ Carr, who's really young, redshirt freshman. So we'll see how they look. I just trust them more than I trust Miami. Like, even though it's really kind of funny because both Marcus Freeman and I can see his face, the head coach at Miami, Mario Cristobal, both have just a way of losing dumb games. Like they both do. I find it funny, probably funnier than all the other Notre Dame fans do, but those are the bets that I will be making this weekend. Baylor plus 2.5, Ohio State minus 1.5, Alabama minus 13.5, Clemson minus 4.5, and the Notre Dame minus 2.5. Now, I'm not betting Indiana or Purdue because those games don't really interest me. I just kind of like to bet the games that I like and that I enjoy, and that I know that I'm going to watch. I'll be honest, probably not going to watch Indiana or Purdue because they should both just be absolute bloodbaths. Indiana and Purdue should both just blow out whoever they play. It's the reality of it. Okay, Indiana should beat Old Dominion by 30. Purdue should beat Ball State by 50. Like that's what should happen, right? Purdue, they're a 17.5-point favorite. Indiana is a 23.5-point favorite. And I think it's really important for both teams to look dominant just for very different reasons. Like for Indiana, like they need to keep the momentum going. Because it's like they're chugging along right now. Like nothing is getting in their way. But if Indiana comes out and they need a last-second field goal to beat Old Dominion, there are some, not all, but some Indiana fans who are going to be like, oh, this is Tom Allen all over again. We're really good one year, ranked 6th in the country. In 2020, Michael Penix is making plays and all this kind of stuff. And then they were really bad after that. And if they squeak out a win against Old Dominion or they look unimpressive, you'll have some Indiana fans walk away and be like, all right, when's basketball season start? We're not going to be very good this year. And then for Purdue, it's the opposite thing. They're trying to create some momentum. Playing Ball State, like you have to house them. Now, I say that because last year, Purdue opened the season with Indiana State and they beat them 49-0. Absolutely crushed them. And even though everyone knew that Purdue was going to be bad last year, beating Indiana State 49-0 made some people perk up a little bit, like, maybe Purdue's not going to be as bad as we thought. And then they were. They lost 11 straight games after that. So they're trying to create momentum. And you have to give people a reason to believe in this new regime. Go beat Ball State by 50. Go beat Southern Illinois by 50 in 2 weeks. Then play USC tough and play Notre Dame tough. If you do that, then you'll see people start to go back to Purdue football games. Like you'll gather some favor in that department because last year they were just so bad. Any sort of progress is going to be nice for Purdue fans to see. So like you don't have to upset Notre Dame, you don't have to beat USC, you don't have to do anything like that. Just go look like a competent football team. And look, some people are saying they are, some people are saying they aren't. I say we don't know because they have one returning starter from last year. Everyone else is new. Very similar to Indiana last year. It's a lot of new faces. Okay, the Indiana over-under was set at 5.5. It's because no one knew what Curt Cignetti was bringing in. And it's the same thing with Barry Odom this year at Purdue. We don't know what he's bringing in. We know what he's lost, but we don't know what he's bringing in. And they could do an Indiana-ish. It'll be tough because of their schedule. It is significantly harder than Indiana's was last year. But they may bring in a bunch of good players and win all the games that they should and go 7-5 or 6-6 and make a bowl game. Like that is not out of the question for Purdue. Nothing is out of the question for them. All the players that they could bring in, they could be terrible and they could go 0-12. And Barry Odom could get fired after one season. That is also on the table. So there's a little bit of mystery with Purdue. We're probably not going to learn much about it this week. Probably won't learn much about it next week either when they probably blow the brakes off of Southern Illinois and Ball State this week. Week 3 against USC at home. That's kind of when we should know how good or bad Purdue is going to be. Spoiler alert, they're probably going to be bad. Just say it. They're probably not going to be very good at football, but I'm just glad that it's back. Like staying up late last night, watching Nebraska and Cincinnati, watching Cincinnati starting quarterback throw just an absolutely terrible go ball to throw a red zone interception with a chance to tie the game and go back. It's just only college football. Or if Anthony Richardson's your quarterback. Do you see decisions like that made? If you're a Wisconsin fan, you should be concerned. You only scored 17 points against Miami, Ohio. So good luck figuring that out. The one and only Zack Gray is set to join the show coming up here in about 5 minutes or so. He is our gambling guy, and we're going to go head to head this year. He and I bet very differently in terms of how we get to our conclusions. I am a casual bettor, right? Like I just kind of like, look, I'm watching this game. I'll put a couple dollars on it. And we're going to do, I guess we're going to call it sharp versus square, him being the sharp and me being the square. And, we're going to go back and forth and we're going to track our picks this year and we're going to see, who does a better job. Spoiler alert, it's probably going to be him. It absolutely will be him because he's really good at this. Get out your pens, get out your paper. Zack Gray, ZG the Grapevine on X. He's set to join the show coming up here in about 4 minutes, and he's going to give you bets, and you're going to want them. I'm telling you right now, you are going to want them. So Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, joins the show in 4 minutes.
If you're 55 or older and into that whole saving money thing, T-Mobile has an exclusive phone and internet bundle just for you. Right now, get 2 unlimited phone lines plus 5G home internet for just $30 each per month with autopay, plus taxes and fees. And with 5G home internet, setup is easy with
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're listening on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. You can also watch the show on X __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there. And while you're following me there and watching the show, you got to check out my guy, Zack Gray, at ZG The Grapevine over on X. Check out the link in his bio. It'll take you to his Patreon where he sells tools to help you make better bets. He joins me now. Zach, we are finally here, man. We have made it to week 1 of the college football season. How are you feeling, man?
Boy, oh boy. It feels great. The weather's perfect. We're turning over to fall. We had games last night. We have games tonight. We have a normal college football Saturday tomorrow. This is my favorite sport. I love it, and there's not anything anyone can say that will ever make me hate this sport. You can talk about NIL, transfer portal, all this. I'm always going to love college football, and it's like a holiday week 1.
It really is. Like I'm going home. Like it really is a holiday. I'm going home to watch week 1 with my dad and my brother, and it's going to be really cool. I need to let you know this. That way you can hold me accountable. My official prediction for the 2025 college football season is that the Clemson Tigers are going to win the national title.
All right. Yeah, you heard it here, folks. Yeah, I heard it here first. I'm sure you've told your listeners, but that's going to be, if that happens, Dabo Swinney goes down as a top 3 coach of all time.
Wow. Him, Urban, and Nick?
Yeah, I don't know if Urban's top 3, but he's definitely top 8. But the idea that Dabo goes through his run that he did at Clemson in the late 2010s, has a little setback, kind of does it his way, stays true to his culture, his team, and then is able to build up a roster to win a national title in the year 2025 with all the changes. Yeah, I think that stamps him as one of the best of all time.
That's totally fair. Let's start with bets. So I guess I'm going to title this Sharp versus Square. Zack Gray and I are going to keep track of our bets all year. We're each going to give one. We're going to track our record. He is the Sharp. I am the Square in this. And I think for my bet this week, Zach, I'm going Baylor plus 2.5 against Auburn. I love the idea of betting on a team that's going to play 3 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's not a bad play. I actually have a play in this game on Patreon. It is not a spread. It is total related. So I do have action tonight, but I do see a lot of trendy plays here. But my model has this right on the line at 2.5.
Okay. That doesn't make me feel good at all. That's okay though. What is your you can obviously give out as many bets as you want or as few as you want. I know that you have one though, at least for our competition on the year. What is your one official bet for our sharp versus square bet of the week?
I'm making a splash play, Jonathan. Give me the Buckeyes.
Okay. I'm betting that too.
Yep, give me the Buckeyes on the money line, -120. My model has this as a 26-22 game, so almost a 4-point edge in my model. What we're seeing here, right, is a classic pressure versus non-pressure situation. I think all the pressure's on Texas. I think that they have a lot of holes to fill this year that people are kind of just glossing over because of the guys that are returning. Hill, Simmons, Wingo, Arch. I think they have a lot of star power up top, but I think they have a lot of guys that they have to replace that didn't play a lot of snaps last year for Texas. I think on the Ohio State side, yeah, they're replacing all 4 of their defensive line starters, but all of the guys that are going to play this year played a lot, meaningful snaps in playoff games, in national title games. Their secondary is intact for the most part. We obviously know about their offensive line being one of the best in the country. Jeremiah Smith, I just think that the Ohio State Buckeyes have a little more idea of what they have as a roster, and I think Texas, what Texas will be tomorrow won't be close to what they are week 6, 8, 10. Texas is going to be a perennial threat to win a national title. I just think that Ohio State has things a little bit more figured out tomorrow.
Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Go follow him on X at ZG the Grapevine. Check out the link in his bio. It'll take you to his Patreon where he sells tools to help you make better bets. Yeah, I've got Ohio State as well, -1.5 for a lot of the same reasons. I also think part of it is I just think it's tough to make your third career start on the road in the Horseshoe with 4 offensive linemen who are making their first career start. So I just think that the fact that this game is on the road is why I'm taking Ohio State. I think that if it was at Texas, I think I'd take the Longhorns, but being on the road in the Horseshoe, I know that Ohio State's going to have the best player on the field in Jeremiah Smith. I think it's hard not to take Ohio State.
I want to make a slight correction to what I said earlier.
Okay.
So we are doing we both pick a game, right? And then we're going to see who had the better record at the end of the year. That's the plan, right?
That is the plan.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. But I want to make a correction on my Baylor. You have Baylor +2.5, right?
Yes.
My model actually does like that play. I have this game as a straight up wash, 27-27. I was looking at the wrong game. So my model is on your side tonight.
That makes me feel great. That makes me feel great. I do have a question for you. So we were texting last night and you mentioned that, the bets got off to a rough start. And you said that you were careful with it when it's early in the year. And obviously we have ideas on who's going to be good and who isn't, but we're obviously going to have much more information week 5 as opposed to week 1 and week 0. What are the precautions you take early in the year?
Yeah. So when it gets, about week 3, week 4, I have enough data to pull this year's data and confidently run my model. But there's a lot of piecing together data and different levels that guys are playing. So when you're going through and creating the data, you have to pull from a lot of different sets and a lot of different teams to get a composite that turns into a score projection. So when I say I'm being careful, I run the data, I look at it, and then I have to parse through and think, how much of this data is from last year's team or from, the transfers on a team. So there's a little more legwork. There's a little more pen to paper research as opposed to the formulas that I have in place once we get into week 3, week 4 that I feel really confident in always. Like, I feel like the way that I run my numbers is it kind of thinks for me in a sense. But for this first couple of weeks, I have to do a little more dirty work, and I'm a little more careful on what I fire on as opposed to, later in the season where an edge is an edge and I feel comfortable taking it. Obviously I'll look into injuries, weather, things like that all season. But that's what I mean by careful. You just have to do a little bit more here with the way college football is early in the season.
That makes sense. Okay, Zach. So sometimes I ask you questions with the purpose of just kind of like poking at you a little bit, and I know that you know that. This question is, I promise, it is not designed to do that. I am genuinely curious because I know that you know more about Ohio State than I do. A couple of years ago, you had Marvin Harrison Jr., and you had Kyle McCord playing quarterback, young guy who hadn't played very much. And the Ohio State offense just didn't feel right, especially in the passing game. Any chance that happens this year with Julian Sayin?
I say there's a chance. I think there's always a chance in the scenario where you're playing a new quarterback. But what I will say is I think that every year that we go through this Ryan Day era, I think there's new challenges that Ryan Day kind of overcomes, learns from, and doesn't let it happen again. I think one of the underrated things about Ryan Day as a coach is that something will happen and it will result in a loss or some type of thing that will hold them back. And then it seems like every time there's a question mark, he answers it. So that's the sign of a really good head coach. He is obviously one of the best head coaches in football. So I think you're looking at that Notre Dame game where Marvin Harrison only has 3 catches. I think you even look at last year's game with Texas and Jeremiah Smith only having that 1 catch. And I think that he's going to do a good job of creating ways to get his best players the ball, whether that's lining up Jeremiah Smith in the slot a little more this year, whether that's getting him in motion, even, lining him up on the line of scrimmage as like a secondary tight end. Like, there's going to be wrinkles, and I don't think that there will be any scenario in which Jeremiah Smith doesn't affect the outcome of the game. Now, if Julian Sayin is not ready for prime time and isn't able to process or make quick decisions, none of that matters. So, yeah, there's that possibility, but I don't think the scheme is going to hold them back tomorrow.
Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Check him out on X at ZG The Grapevine. Check out the link in his bio where he sells tools to help you make better bets. So I had Shehan Jeyarajah.
That was a good answer, by the way.
That is a good answer. That's a really good answer. Thank you. So I had Shehan Jeyarajah on earlier. I don't know if you know who he is. He covers college football for CBS. Does a really good job. And I asked him this question, and I'd like your answer as well. Kind of feels like Alabama and Georgia are flying under the radar, which is a really weird thing to say. Why do you think people aren't as interested in those two teams to start the year?
Yeah, I think things with Alabama are a little more positive. I think people are expecting a little more of I think Josh Tate predicted Alabama to win the title this year.
He did.
So there's some people that are really high on Alabama, and it's a matter of whether or not you think that Ty Simpson is ready to go and that Kalen DeBoer is ready to be a national championship head coach at Alabama. When it comes to Georgia, I think we are just kind of, as a college football collective, we're just maybe a little bit desensitized to Georgia at this point. I do think that people have serious questions about Gunnar Stockton, their offensive line, their ability to run the ball, that kind of nabbed them last year. If it was me, I have a more positive outlook on Alabama this year just because I feel like there's more to prove. They have to get to the playoff this year. They have to make a legitimate run, or things get really, really weird in Tuscaloosa. With Georgia, I think we know they're going to be there. I think we all kind of have an idea that if they don't win the SEC, they're going to be right there in the thick of things to win it, and they'll probably be in Atlanta for the title game. They'll make the playoffs. So I think that's probably why two different paths, but that's why both of those teams are kind of under the radar, and I think Alabama even a little bit less than Georgia.
So Georgia, these are kind of the two things that I'm watching this year. For Georgia, like when they were at their peak and we were kind of like, it felt like we were picking them every year to win the title in like the early 2020s, late 2010s. Their run defense was incredible, like gave up on average like 80 rushing yards per game. Last year, that number I think it's either 113 or 130. I don't remember, but either way, like that's a pretty significant jump. So I'm interested to see if Kirby Smart can address that issue in addition to the Gunnar Stockton issue and not being able to run the ball. For Alabama, I was looking at them and I was like, they're bringing back 14 starters. 8 of 11 of their starters on defense from last year are back. I trust Kalen DeBoer offensively to figure it out. I do think that Ty Simpson's going to be better than Milroe was last year. So I'm with you on the Alabama thing, much more positive. I have a much more positive outlook with them than I do Georgia. But what are you kind of expecting from Georgia's defense this year? Because I do think that that's an aspect of their decline that people haven't talked about as much.
I expect them to be, a top 15 defense, even better than that. Like, I don't think that I'll ever have concerns about Georgia's defense. I think that kind of another way to think about this is that Georgia's defense was so elite when they won those 2 national titles that their offense was kind of able to skate by, whether that was having, less talented quarterbacks than their contemporary peers or whatever the case is. But I think you kind of see that they have a great defense, really good defense, but they don't have that elite defense. And that kind of bleeds into people recognizing more about their, maybe their lackluster offense at wide receiver last year with all the drops and their line play and running game. So I think it kind of all works hand in hand. Their defense isn't the best in the country, I don't believe. So that's why you see that a little more offensive focus on how they need to be better.
Last thing, and I'll let you go. I gave you who I think is going to win the national title this year. Do you have a prediction? If not, that's fine. I'm just curious if you do.
I don't yet. I will have one. We'll say this. I will have a special offer for Grapevine Projections later, and I'll have a national championship pick later.
That's going to happen at 2:00 during the Dan Dockett Show, so make sure you're tuned in to take advantage of Zack Gray's projections discount, I'm assuming, or his flash sale, and for his national championship winner. As much as I don't like to admit this, Zack Gray is usually better at predicting the college football stuff than I am. So I would definitely be ready to go at 2:00. Zach, thanks for your time, man.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yep, talk to you soon. Zack Gray, follow him on X at ZG the Grapevine. I will talk to him at 2:00 coming up on the Dan Dockett Show today. And speaking of the Dan Dockett Show, comes your way next. Dan Plesac at 12:30 and the Coach Venturi at 1:00. Thank you for tuning in to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I greatly appreciate it. I'll be back again on Tuesday. I'm off Monday for Labor Day. Be back again on Tuesday from 10 to noon. Just bringing you all sorts of great takes. It's going to be amazing. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next.